On the agenda tonight, we're going to be taking a look at Satchel from Steel Panther, and he's going to be playing through his lead solo show-off piece that he played here in London with the band while they were on tour, and this is coming from Wembley Arena back in 2016. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So let's get Satchel up on screen and see how he gets on. I'm just going to jump in here because already we can hear that Satchel has so many different influences going on in there, but especially some Van Halen working its way in. And this is the interesting thing about Satchel as a guitarist, given the fact that when he left studying from his guitar institute over in the USA, it was about 1989, so it meant that all of the guitarists, all of the players, the bands that he was into at that time, were just about really to have the door closed on them from a commercial perspective because of grunge that really started to take off late 80s, especially early 90s. It was bands like Lynch Mob, George Lynch, who I've featured on this channel before, and coming from Dokken, who were very successful in the 80s, but then going into the 90s with Lynch Mob, and Winger is another example of a very late 80s, early 90s band who had that hard rock sound, and especially with Steel Panther, we're looking at glam rock here, but there are so many influences in this music and in them as a band that are from hard rock and metal and heavy metal. Just to let you know as well, the link to this video is going to be in the description below if you want to watch it all the way through. Towards the end of the show-off piece, he does play through quite a lot of well-known riffs, and knowing the current climate on copyrights, I don't want to push my luck by showing lots and lots of different riffs by different guitarists, but everything is in there, even Smoke on the Water, if you want to look out for it. So so you can go to the link in the description below in order to watch it the whole way through. But getting back to Satchel and his influences, considering that late 80s, early 90s, he just finished studying and was now a guitar instructor, teaching people how to play. And in his teenage years, he would have been listening to all of the top players in the 80s, and there was so much great technique kicking off in the 80s, and Satchel has that in spades. But then, going into the 90s, the great thing is that Satchel is into the music that he's into and the style of playing that he likes. And you'll find that it's something that a lot of people will relate to, where you're into a particular kind of music or a particular artist, and the scene might change in the music industry, but you don't leave your love for that sound and that artist behind. If anything, you carry that through for the rest of your life. And this is something that Steel Panther as a whole just embody, just doing the music that they like to do. They've got a very particular angle that they are approaching it from, and that's what makes it different and new to a certain extent, because they're looking back at glam rock, especially with the image, and playing it at a top level. And this is the other thing that I need to mention, that the technical ability on show here, not only from Satchel, but across the board in Steel Panther as a band, is equivalent to the top bands in the 80s. And I'm not talking about they're a great cover band. I'm saying that these guys, if they were around in the 80s, they would have cleaned up if they'd hit the scene in the early 80s. So it meant that in the 90s, the bands and the guitarists that Satchel had been into for the last 10 years weren't flavour of the month anymore. The music industry had moved on to something else. So Satchel joined lots of cover bands that were cover bands of 80s bands and 70s bands. And when you look down the list of some of the bands that they were covering, you had Thin Lizzy in there, Rush as well. If you're going to be in a Rush cover band, you have got to have top technical ability, and it just so happens that Satchel did and does. It won't surprise you to learn that he was in a Van Halen cover band as well, called the Atomic Punks, and this is where Steel Panther came from originally, because they were just covering 80s songs, 80s bands, and Ralph, the singer, set up a band in 2003, and 6 years after that, they then changed the name to Steel Panther. They were doing covers, but then started to put in some of their own original material in the set, and it just snowballed from there. Technique-wise, like I said, you can see so many influences in there, and it's influences from different styles and I'd say different depths of technique, because you've got a little bit of Van Halen in there, you've got a bit of Malmsteen in there as well, and all of that sweeping, the arpeggios that he goes through, which are highly accurate. This is another thing that I've got to mention. You do not get to this level of ability just doing it for a laugh or just pretending to be like a glam band back in the 80s. This is serious practice, and even that doesn't state the case strong enough. You have to practice every single day for hours and hours and hours for years and years to get to this level of proficiency at sweep picking, alternate picking, economy picking, tapping. There are so many techniques in here that I do mention in other styles of music, such as country music and bluegrass, where there's a lot of 16th note runs and alternate picking. You've got exactly the same thing in heavier genres of music as we have here, and it's something that if you're not into hard rock or glam rock, then it's fine. You don't have to be into that kind of music. But a mistake a lot of people make is when they're not into a particular style of music or genre, they say that it's rubbish or they don't really appreciate it on a technical level. And this is something, like I've just mentioned, with country music. Guys, especially those that are very good technically at playing hard rock, metal, heavy metal, have always got a deep appreciation of country players because of their technique, and vice versa. All of these techniques cross over, and those guys that are amazing flat pickers in country music and bluegrass, they have worked at that their whole lives in exactly the same way that guys like Satchel have been working at it. The other thing is that people going to watch Steel Panther live are not going out to watch a comedy show. They are genuine hard rock, metal, heavy metal, glam rock fans who have probably seen it in the 80s, but then again, you might have the next generation whose parents were into that, and then the kids start getting into it, and this is who they can go to for a great representation of exactly the technical ability and sound that you would have got in the 80s. Like I said, these guys are on par with the best bands back in the 80s. As you can probably tell from my haircut, I've listened to a lot of hard rock and metal, glam rock from the 80s. And the impressive thing about Satchel is the way that he blends together so many techniques. Like I said, the uber technical players such as Malmsteen and Van Halen with tapping, but then also Alex Lifeson, for example, his control and his feel and the vibrato that we get with Satchel, because he's spent just as much time thinking about what he's playing melodically as the technical aspects of it and actually getting it down on the fretboard. So this show-off piece is interesting the whole time. Obviously, he's got that showmanship side to it as well, so it is entertaining the whole time, and the crowd are so into this. Sometimes you find when you go and watch a band and it is the guitar show-off piece, and maybe it goes on for a little bit too long, especially if the player is concentrating a lot on what they're playing technically, there's not a great deal of interaction with the crowd. And it's the exact opposite here. It's all about entertainment, but having that entertainment paired with top level playing ability. But let's get back into the video. I'm just going to jump in here because this is the section where Satchel gets into playing loads of different riffs, and I don't want to push the copyright boundaries too much with this video, but as I said, the link to this video is going to be in the description below, so you guys can check it out there. Another thing to mention, just technically about the solo, when we resumed the video, Satchel changes to his delay sound, where you can see that he's strumming the guitar and then throwing it out to the crowd, getting the interaction back, and you can hear the guitar sounding, but he's not strumming the guitar. That's just the delay. So it means that every lead note that he plays is going to be delayed at double the speed that he's picking. So it gives a really interesting effect, especially when it is this well rehearsed and executed, because you have to be so accurate with your picking and your timing in order for that delay to repeat the note back right between every pick that you're playing, every other pick. When I say every other pick, it sounds like it's being picked all the time, but one of those is just a repeat of the first pick, and then it gets repeated the second time, even though you're not picking, it's just the delay of that first audio signal. So it means that every other pick is actually being played, even though it sounds like it's being picked all the time. I'm hoping that it's making sense. Anyway, something that Nuno Bettencourt does with his setup as well for his solo sections when he does play at gigs is have that set up at a very specific interval, exactly the same here. The accuracy of playing is the thing that has to be spot on. We have got the interesting addition here as well of using the bass drum to put that rhythm in there as well, especially when he starts playing riffs. It adds so much, and some of the riffs did just have the foot pedal in there on the recorded version of the song, so it really does bring in such a full sound, considering that it's just a guitar show-off piece, and I haven't seen a guitarist go behind the drum kit before and add that element to their own playing. So there are so many things here that keep your interest, not only the melodic playing, the technical ability, if you want to analyze that, you can go on for years, but then just throwing it all together musically and having that rhythmic element in here just ties it all together. And there's another section where the crowd gets so involved with this whole show-off piece that it isn't boring. Like I said before, sometimes that can happen with show-off pieces. It is anything but a joke because of the amount of work that's gone into it. Anybody who looks at this and doesn't think it's that impressive, or they might not be into it and wrongly think it's rubbish, just pick up a guitar and try and play this note for note, because you will definitely have some trouble. There are so many top tier technical techniques going on here. Not only that, but it's the execution live. Just to break the illusion briefly at the end of the video, because we've got Russell John Parrish that we're actually watching here, and he's also almost 50 years of age, so he is definitely wearing well. But what I love about his playing and his approach to playing is that there is obviously a genuine love of the style of music that he's playing. And you don't get this good at playing these techniques without that genuine love and drive to succeed. Maybe people are thrown off the scent because of the marketing and the way that the image of the band is portrayed, but if you do play guitar yourself, you know exactly how good Satchel is, and if you sing yourself as well, you know how great Ralph is. Just classic 80s voice, but going across the whole sound. Everything is nailed from a technical perspective. But thank you guys so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and it is one of those videos where I don't really look too out of place next to the picture. Keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!